Hello, and thank you for taking a seat at my warm table during season 1. I'm Sonia Nolan, and I am so grateful for your support of my podcast passion project and all that we've achieved together in our weekly episode. As we wrap up season 1, I thought I'd just check in, say hello, and just give us a bit of an overview of what we've achieved in this first season. Season 1 for me was all about learning the art of podcasting and producing quality content that I hoped would add value to my warm table listeners. It was also an exercise for me in overcoming imposter syndrome. I'm really proud of the weekly discipline in releasing the episodes that we have. We released 30 quality conversations with an eclectic and expert range of guests who were so generous in sharing their stories throughout season 1. Looking back, we really have created an amazing catalogue of smart conversations with heart that I really hope you'll continue to dip back into and reaffirm some of the messaging that we had during the year. We talked about politics just ahead of the Australian federal election, and I'm so pleased that our first 2 warm table guests, Kate Chaney and Madeline King, won their respective seats and they're making their marks in Parliament. I like to think that my warm table had a little tiny itsy bitsy reason behind their success. We dabbled in the arts with the very talented singer-songwriter Helen Shanahan and the fabulous comedian Bonnie Davies, who both very generously gave us backstage passes to their creative worlds. We talked a lot about the brain. Specifically, we heard about concussion, autism, migraine and epilepsy. We met one of the world's pioneers of neuroscience, Professor Lynn Beasley. And we also took a trip to a world-renowned facility for brain rehabilitation, which is right here in Perth. Our conversations ranged from women's health with nurse practitioner Cherie Walker to dreaming about a childhood long ago in mystical Bombay with Spice Mamas Sultana Shamshi and Shaheen Hughes. We've pondered our overconsumption and sustainability with Raj Kandia, and we also wondered how to create beautiful, livable cities with Millie Main. Around the warm table, we have feasted on the insights of internationally renowned but Perth-based talent, including futurist Gihan Pereira, personal brand consultant Alba Gomez, career transition coach and Churchill Fellow Lois K. Smith, and of course our global ambassador for applied compassion Catherine Kolomajek and survival expert Mike House. We met a real flying doctor. We met a royal housemaid, an Aboriginal funeral director. We heard the wisdom of beautiful Catholic nun, Sister Anne Tormey. We heard about the joys and the frustrations of being a tech startup entrepreneur. We heard about an award-winning author, a comic book contract lawyer, and a personal chef. There is definitely a lot of food for thought in our episodes. Together, we built a community on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, and we shared recipes, comments, and encouragement. We even entered the Australian Podcast Awards, and My Warm Table faithfuls voted with their hearts in the Listener's Choice category. We didn't win, but we didn't need an award to know just how great the My Warm Table community is. My aim in launching my own podcast was to add positivity and warmth into the WA media landscape. My hope was to create a recipe for smart conversations with heart around a warm table of curiosity and acceptance to build empathy and perspective. Your feedback throughout season 1 really encouraged me and affirmed that I was on the right track. Your response to the episode on neurodiversity with Alexandra Helens was a particular highlight. So many listeners were deeply moved by the conversation, sharing their family experiences with autism. They told me that hearing Alexandra's story and success gave them hope because it encouraged us all to embrace how these amazing minds will undoubtedly help us solve our world's many complex issues. I also had parents reach out with thanks for the conversation with futurist Gihan Pereira. It helped them reconnect with their teenage children who are facing very different future trends than we did at their age. Catherine Kolomajek, our very own global ambassador for applied compassion, created ripples of kindness and many tears amongst our listeners as she reflected on her life as a social worker resettling refugees and how her postcard project with 400 volunteers touched the hearts of stranded sailors off our coast during COVID. Your feedback told me how hearing her story changed your views and actually made you more compassionate. That was incredible feedback to receive. We shared some recipes too along the way, but I must admit this became less and less important to me as the season evolved, and the warm table feast became so much more about ideas and insights than it was about entrees. But in saying this, it was a delight to reconnect with personal chef Valerio Fontanelli and hear his philosophies on food, his Italian heritage and traditions, his thoughts on veganism, and also how to study and work with passion. Importantly, a common theme which emerged in several episodes was the importance of finding moments of stillness to reconnect with yourself and your quiet inner voice. I was astounded at how many times this came up and this real call to find time to slow down and appreciate nature and the simple things in life. It was also continually reaffirmed with the example that our Aboriginal people show us, the example of stewardship of our land and the many, many things we can learn from Australia's Aboriginal people. It was highlighted many times over, so it was an absolute privilege to then welcome Sharon Todd, who's Western Australia's first female Aboriginal funeral director, around the warm table. And she shared with us her culture, the stories of the Dreamtime, and her hopes for reconciliation. It's been such a privilege to set the table for so many wonderful humans who live and work among us here in WA. So thank you for taking a seat with us and sharing the feast of ideas, insights, and expertise. And while I'm on the thank yous, I must take a moment to thank some important people who were instrumental in getting My Warm Table off the ground. A very special thanks to Jay, the sound engineer extraordinaire, who's been the one to create the magic sound mastering and to fix any of my dodgy edits along the way. Jay added the final polish to each episode. Thank you, Jay, for helping to make My Warm Table sound that little bit more professional than it would have been if I'd been left to my own devices. I'd like to thank Eva of If Innovation Could Talk, which is a wonderful vlogcast that you can find on YouTube or LinkedIn. Eva was instrumental in encouraging me in the early days to give podcasting a go and to help me overcome my imposter syndrome. I'd like to thank Maria, Juliana and Joe, three of my dearest friends who provided unfiltered feedback and proud encouragement every step of the way, every week. Also to Tanya, who very bravely showed us how she listens to My Warm Table by sending me photographs every week of what she was doing as she was listening to the podcast. It was hilarious, and you can see them on Instagram and Facebook. Many, many ideas of how you can keep listening to the podcast. I'd like to thank my dear friend Jane for her provocation to get a better podcast title than what I had originally been thinking. It's thanks to Jane that we landed on My Warm Table and the whole concept then took shape. And it took me back to my Italian heritage to honour my papa's words of a tavola calda, that warm table of good friendship and deep conversation. And of course, my gratitude always belongs to my family, to Paul, Eliana and Daniel for their patience while I physically and absolutely ignored them with my headphones on when I was deep in the land of podcast producing and editing. For every one of you who reached out with ideas and with encouragement, friends who humoured me as I overtalked about my passion project, and to all our generous guests of season 1 who said yes to my invitation to come and sit with me around my warm table. And thank you so much to the listeners, to you. Every single time I saw that my download statistics were rising and that people were actually listening to the podcast, I really, really got a real buzz. So thank you so much. If you've missed some episodes, do wander back through the catalogue and listen. As you can hear from today's wrap-up, we just spoke to so many interesting people, and there really is something for everybody. Please share your favourite episodes with your family and friends, and continue to tell people about My Warm Table podcast so that we can keep amplifying the good news and the good people of Western Australia. You can keep in touch through our social media pages on Facebook, LinkedIn and Instagram, or send an email to mywarmtable@sonianolan.com. I can't wait for next season. I'm not sure what that's going to look like right now. putting a little bit of planning and thought into it. But I really hope that we can continue to eat, think, and be merry.